Hello and welcome to the Wild Wild West podcast. My name is Richie Richey of the MHRT Network. You will note that we are 2 men down on today's show. We are expecting at least one of them to join us shortly. We do apologize for not having the full complement of the AFC West joining us today. However, we do have the most storied rivals of the AFC West with you join you to start off with, which is obviously myself as the Broncos representative, and over to my right, we have Captain Jack Rackham, who is the representative for the Raiders. And let me tell you guys right now, we have quite an interesting show for you today with a lot of interesting takes. Captain Jack, you can catch him on his own channel, all through YouTube and the Twitter and all the things about everything Raiders. He goes live multiple times a week and talks about all things Raiders, and from time to time kind of meanders into other sports as well, depending on the day. And we're going to go ahead and bring in Coach Defense here of the Lockdown Defense channel there on the YouTubes. Coach, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. You know, I'm healing. That's all I'm gonna tell you. I'm healing. It's been a wild week for your boy, your ball coach there. Been a wild week. But we are healing. That's all I'm gonna say. We're healing. We're out of an abusive relationship and we're on to bigger and better things, and trying to be better people. Trying to be better people.
I'm just sifting through the comments here in the chat, Coach, since you joined us with shades. It is definitely a bit of a sympathetic chat towards your Chargers after this past week, which I'm sure you at least appreciate, if nothing else.
Yes, I appreciate the well wishes and condolences in this rough time. You know, it's the funeral of sorts in Charger land, but you know, we're going to get past it, and you know, it's one day at a time.
Right.
I'm pissed. I'm on record. I'm pissed. I wanted Brandon Staley to stay, baby.
Of course you
did. I
did.
wanted him to stay. Not just for this year, but for years and years to come. Because
he was
the best thing. He was the best thing that ever happened.
Yeah. Bring back McDaniels while you at it. Keep talking. Bring back McDaniels while you at it. F him. Yeah. No. You're not gonna wish bad on my Chargers and not get the same back.
No. Oh no. I'm no wishing. He was such a commodity, man. I know you loved him.
I did not. I think we've all established how I feel. I think it's very well documented that what has happened and what's been going on. I've been banging this drum since 27-0 debacle that we needed something better. But you know, whatever. We're healing. Like I said, we're healing. It's one day at a time. You know, we have to do our therapy. You know, get our counseling. You know, work on our mental health, and hopefully in the next few weeks we'll get some better news, and you know, we can get into a better and more promising relationship with our organization, and we can start over. You know, we're moving to it's like moving to a new city. You leave the town you're in, you start a new job, you need all fresh start. It's almost like you're witness protection.
Well, it's like what was it, Jack said, you owe us. You owe us.
Listen,
you owe us.
I'm not gonna say that. Y'all put the boost to us, and rightfully so. You know, I'm not going to act like the 63 points wasn't nothing to sneeze at. But I will say this: that regardless of who we lined up against this particular week, I think that the locker room had made a conscientious decision. I think the Raiders had something to do with it because they are a heated rival. So they made a conscious decision to say that we're going to make us look completely and utterly bad, you know, and look like an embarrassment as a team. And the front office and the Spanos family will have no choice but to get rid of Brandon Staley. I think that's where it landed at. I really think that they said that we're done. We quit on him. We're going to make it very vehemently obvious that he's not the guy. He's lost the locker room. He's lost the players. I think that they gave up on him and they wanted to be known on national television. They said this is prime time. It's a single game. It's no undistracted market. But you're going to see it live and direct, and we're going to let them put up as many points as they want to put up, and we're going to look like a JV team out there, and they're going to have no choice.
Okay. Well, as Anna said, at least you didn't have a 70 burger thrown on you. Hey, Rich, is that too soon?
What?
Well, I think y'all tried though. I think if y'all could have got another chance at it, y'all have got win for 70. Let's not act like y'all didn't try.
Trust me, I think that we actually were. We had, but we couldn't get that last couple first downs to sustain it. And we kind of petered out after the 63, after the wonderful Jones interception.
Oh my!
Oh
my!
And all that, and we did try.
That was a play. That I don't care who you are. That was a play.
Listen, me when it comes to defensive plays, I'm all for it. I'm not biased in that at all. I'll definitely be like, "Whoa, oh, that was great. That was a great play."
Yeah, I don't care who you are. I don't care what team you're with. You're just literally saying, You
remember the spot in the Water Boy when he was reading the Football for Dummies book? That's how I felt like. He's like, "Oh yeah, this formation, this alignment. Oh yeah, screen." And he jumped it, and it was done deal.
Yeah, either that or the movie with Robin Williams, where it's okay, Jack, this bottle cap is you. You're the thimble. You're the two straws, and you know what I'm talking about. The Robin Williams, where he goes back and he replayed the high school game from like 25 years in the past with Kurt Russell. I can't remember. Come on, Coach, help me on this. Man.
I'm sorry. I don't know. If I had to, by the time I might be able to get with you, I don't know. I'm a little fuzzy on my Robin Williams trivia.
Best of times.
Best of times. Thank you,
okay.
Anna. I knew. I almost said best times of our life, but I knew that.
Anna knew. She's on it.
Yeah,
shout out to Anna.
Best of times, man. Go watch the movie, Coach. You will enjoy it. You will.
Indeed. We'll do. But again, like I said, we're healing. On the better days where we should be. I think Rich and I talked about this on Twitter earlier. We should be, really focusing on evaluating talent, looking at the 2024 roster, who's on it, and who we need to evaluate to see who's going to be a player and contributor for next year. That should be our goal right now for the next 3 games. So that's where we're at. Like I said,
that's actually what I wanted to bring up with both of you guys right now. Generally speaking, let's be real, the Raiders have not been putting up 63 points or even that.
Have never put up 60.
No, but that's besides the point. The point is that the Raiders haven't been pushing past even the 30 or 40 point mark this season. So this isn't
they were lucky to get 20 most of the time that they had.
Right.
With McDaniels, that's for sure.
Right.
With McDaniels, that's for sure.
So my point is that the Raiders haven't necessarily had like the world leader offense this year, right? And so, both of your team's records are several back, even for where the Broncos are now at 7-7, and they're even a couple more back from where the Chiefs are now, sitting atop the division. And Alex, yes, I did just give your Chiefs some credit, so you can rewatch this and thank me later. But when you look at where you guys are both at, the question then comes: why aren't you playing the depths of your roster? And what I mean by that is call up some practice squad guys, bring up some dudes that otherwise you wouldn't normally have play, and see what you have for the future as you look towards the future, see what they look like on film, on tape, and on field. And then let your coach then have NFL game film on these guys to make better decisions. To me, that makes nothing but sense, and I don't know why you wouldn't do it. There's reasons why. Okay, first off, and this is going to sound stupid because the Raiders, and I don't know if the Chargers have been eliminated yet, but the Raiders.
Oh, we're done. Yeah, we're done. We're done.
The Raiders have not been eliminated from playoff competition. Up until that point, they're going to do things like play Max Crosby till his knee falls off. Okay, that's one reason why. The second reason why is that they are actually going through their roster and getting people to play in and play out. Today they got rid of their 7th round pick, Nestor Jake Silvera, who was the defensive tackle that showed promise and actually had ties to the coach. Well, he played for UM, but he also played for Arizona State, and they just got rid of him today. So they are going through the roster and seeing what is going to be there, who can play, who cannot play, and that was actually a surprising move on that. They went out and yesterday they got it from the Panthers organization. I think his name is McCall. He's like maybe a couple sandwiches short of 400 pounds, and they're going to inserted him on the practice squad. So they are revamping the roster to see who can play, who can't play, things along those lines. And the third reason why is that technically this is not Antonio Pierce's squad. So he can do X, Y, and Z, but until they say you're the coach, it's all for naught, because it's just a matter of showing kind of like the old expression from what was it, the old Wendy's commercial, parts is parts, pieces parts. It's all parts is parts. There's no rhyme or reason for the players that are playing, because they are trying to play for wins up until a point where they would be mathematically eliminated, right? And you gotta mix in the best players along with people that might be able to play next year. For whom? You put all of those things together, and that's why you don't have all of these practice squad players coming up, and they got rid of all these things. Now, this has been a slow process because they got rid of Peters a couple of years ago. I wish it was a couple of years ago. It seems like it's been years. It seems like we've been calling it for his ass to get cut for years ago, and it was a couple of weeks ago we finally got rid of his ass, okay? So it's a slow process, Richie. Up until a point where the Raiders are eliminated, it's not going to be all in, go get all the guys to play. You understand what I'm saying?
I do. So, Captain, I have this comment to pull up, and very much dovetails into where I'm at with the Raiders in terms of where you guys are at right now. And what makes this show, and frankly, just across all of our channels, a little bit different, is I see no reason to be disrespectful to another team. And I think that it behooves us to actually learn a little bit about each other's teams if we're ever going to speak competently about, the other opponents that we're going up against on a weekly basis. So where I'm looking at from the Raiders' perspective right now, Captain, is that your team has exactly a 7% chance of making the playoffs.
Wow, it's gone up, because it was less than 1% before the game with the Chargers. And right. Coach, my gift to you today, Coach, today and only today, it is the Los Angeles Chargers. That's my gift to you. That's my gift to you. I can't hear you because you're muted.
You're muted.
You're muted, brother.
My bad. I'm going to cherish this moment. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm going to.
Don't let it be said that I don't have a soft heart.
It's Christmas, though, Santa, so I appreciate it. That's your gift to me. Thank you.
I guess what my point is this, is just like the Chargers, the Raiders have struggled in certain areas of their roster this season. And I think, and I'll even include my Broncos in this too. When you look at how we played in the Lions game versus the other teams we played leading up to the Lions, you saw the exact difference between a playoff and potentially Super Bowl caliber team go against another team that was not at that level. And you also saw the difference between coaching playing chess and coaching playing checkers at the NFL level. Sean Payton was out-coached the entirety of that game, and he didn't do enough to get our team back in it from the offensive perspective. And that's partially also on Lombardi as well, although Lombardi seemed to be a face up in the booth, not doing much. So either way, my point is this is the time to churn through guys in the back end of your roster to see what you've got. And that won't necessarily hinder your chances at making the playoffs. And what I mean by this is, for example, for the Chargers, you guys have struggled this entire season with your run defense. Okay. So what do you have to lose to bring up, whatever D tackles you have on the practice squad and say, let's see what you got? Right? You have nothing to lose at this point to put yourself in that position, right? Now, on the flip side, Captain, your secondary has been better this year, but your linebacking play and some of your D tackle positions have struggled a little bit in certain games, in certain instances, which is where some of these struggles have been. And you've also had some struggles largely actually on your offensive line as your number one area on your roster. So then the question is, okay, what linemen offensively do you have on your practice squad? And might they perhaps fit a position that has been struggling for you to date on the season? And why not rotate in someone when you only have a 7% chance at making the playoffs, which is
whoa, wait a second. I'll take your point, but did you notice? Because I didn't until it was brought to my attention last night on the Chopping It Up with Captain and DC Peggy, that the Raiders actually did a zone blocking scheme in that game. They kept and because I'm being kind to coach, they kept somebody by the name of Khalil Mack to 0 sacks in that zone blocking scheme. They actually played well offensively up front. They had a freaking pocket for Aiden O'Connell. The wide receivers and the tight ends were going out and doing their chips before they even got the ball. So it was a matter of not necessarily the offense, because the offensive linemen were the same. They were the same across the board, minus injuries, because Parm was at center, and that should have been done a long time ago. But they had Parm at center, they had Meredith at left guard, and they actually had a zone blocking scheme that, oh my God, it freaking worked. And they kept those guys playing. So you say, well, they should bring this guy in and that guy in and that guy. Well, they actually did. They brought Meredith in because, pardon me, James was injured and they moved Parm over. So they did it only because of injury, but they also changed the scheme. And the reason why I said it was brought to my attention is because, honestly, I was enjoying the ass whipping so much, I didn't really notice. Coach, I'm sorry, that's true, but I didn't mean it to sound as harsh as it was. But I was enjoying the ass whipping so much, I wasn't noticing if it was a run blocking scheme, a zone blocking scheme, a power scheme. I was just enjoying the fact that they were putting points on the board. So they did it intrinsically and over the game, Richie. So you say, well, why don't we bring these guys up? Well, they didn't have to.
right.
But the point is that they need to see if this will continue, because therein lies the rub. If it doesn't continue, and once the Raiders are, and if they are eliminated from playoff competition, and first things first, they got to beat Kansas City, the Smugs. I can do it because Alex is in here. They got to go into Kansas City and beat the Smugs on Christmas. So if they do that, then, God knows what can happen, Richie.
Right, I agree. It is a rare occurrence to see an offensive blocking scheme change occur mid-season like that. It is not usual. However, if there are certain plays that were in the playbook, then the offensive line would have already been practicing that style of blocking, so it wouldn't necessarily be a huge stretch. And if the linemen are better suited to an outside zone versus inside power or variations of kind of combo blocks, which kind of end up with a hybrid blocking scheme at that point, then fair enough. That's on the coaches in order to recognize the players that they have, and clearly your coaches recognized, or at least wanted to test it out, whether or not the outside. I am curious. I'll have to actually rewatch the game. And not the highlights, and go through the entirety of the game to see if it was an inside zone, outside zone, or a combination. But it'll be very interesting to see how they ran the ball and what they did to run the ball from an offensive line blocking scheme to kind of reassess and kind of see what you guys did. But it doesn't change my comment. But the point is that right now you guys are potentially auditioning Pierce for the head coaching job.
Yeah.
And And, if you were, I assume your ownership is in this mindset as well, you're going to be looking outside the organization for a potential new head coach as well, and then making a decision. Okay. Well, what vision does that coach have, whether it's Pierce or somebody else? And do you have the right players on the roster to execute that vision? You're not going to know if your guys fit if you don't play them in those scenarios. And Ed, you're absolutely correct, by the way, in your comment, which is you do that in practice. You're right, you do, but you're not going to be able to get a true idea of how a guy adapts at full game speed unless they're played in a game. And for example, Tim Tebow was notorious for being a trash practice player, but yet when the rubber hit the road, he seemed to kind of dig deep and find a way to pull his team and generally win games, even at the NFL level, if you're going to be quite honest, in terms of how he played when he was here in Denver at least. So I think you need to put guys in real game situations when they're up against, the old cliche, live bullets, and see what the opposing defenses can do and see how these guys can adapt and pull themselves out. Because the Raiders and the Chargers right now, I know the Raiders aren't mathematically eliminated, but 7% is quite a hill to kind of climb.
It's a small number.
Yeah, it's quite a hill to climb. And in order for that to come true, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm almost certain that you need certain situations to play out in order to get yourself into the playoffs.
We got to win out, and then we have to have this team. Actually, I think it's pretty much everybody above us has to at least 2 games.
Yeah.
Again, and it's possible that we could do our part,
and then the other teams don't do theirs. Yes.
Right. Yeah. Well, but it's possible that we can do our part, and then maybe have 3/4 of the people above us, based upon the schedule, do their part. But that one team that doesn't is the one team that's going to make it in front of us.
Right.
So that's just the way it is. Yeah.
Right. And that's fine and fair enough. But the point being is that it is more likely than not that you're not going to be in the dance. Fair enough. And that's okay, because I think that most fans at this point have kind of come to terms with the fact that this isn't the year. And to Ed's point, you need to strive for excellence in order to win at the NFL level. And I think Coach can agree with that as well. And to do that, you want the right guys on the field. You want the right players on your roster, and you need to know what you have and who you have. Because, Captain, here's an example. Let's say you have a linebacker on your practice squad. And let's say that linebacker can come up for the next 2 games and just light the world on fire in terms of sideline to sideline speed or anticipatory plays or a combination of several factors. Well, as a Raiders fan, wouldn't you want your coaching staff and ownership to see that on full display, given the fact that you have 2 games to potentially see that in live action? Because maybe that means you don't draft a linebacker in the 4th round. Maybe that means you keep that guy on your roster as that 2nd or 3rd option, but then you draft a linebacker in the 7th round as a developmental guy to kind of further bolster that room rather than waste a higher draft pick when you can perhaps get, I don't know, say like an offensive center or a guard or something like that might be better suited for your roster, given the fact that you may well have found a gem at the linebacker spot.
Well, as Richie, I think that there is, like I said, there is tinkering going on, and Coach, I don't want to I want to make sure we talk about the Chargers again. See, I said it again. I want to make sure that we're talking about the Chargers and what they are going to be doing as well, because the Raiders and the Chargers are, like I said, are right now outside looking in. Chargers already making their plans for golf on the 15th of January or something like that. So they got their golf dates already set. The Raiders are looking to see what other dates are available once the Chargers have theirs booked, okay? But they still got a week to do it or so.
Yeah.
Point is, though, they are doing it incrementally.
Yeah.
But they're not going to do it widespread.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Until they know what the outcomes will be. And again, this has been a bad year for the Chargers because of primarily coaching. and they got rid of, as we got rid of the main problem that was impeding our team, the Los Angeles Chargers got rid of the main problem that was impeding theirs. Now, one thing I will say, though, and I like to hear Coach's opinion on this, is Tedesco. You know, they got rid of him, too. Was that necessarily a good move? Because that guy was drafting a lot of good players for that organization, but it was throwing the baby out with the bathwater because he was tied to Staley. And the one thing that I said that, you know, I'm glad that in our situation when we got rid of McDaniels and Ziegler, they were tied to the hip. And Ziegler, yeah, he did some decent things, but a lot of that was because of what Kelly, our interim GM, was doing from behind the scenes. Because Ziegler, per people, Kelly knew more stuff about the team than Ziegler did. So when we got rid of McDaniel or Mick fired, or as my friend Jack Kent, I'll say this for you, Jack, because I know you wanted to say it. McShitnuts, when he was fired, right? They got rid. I did it just for you, Jack, because I said I will do it. But when they got rid of him, they got rid of Ziegler. They got Kelly in that spot. They got Antonio Pierce in that spot, and they elevated what was a good functioning of the guys underneath. Now with the Chargers, yeah, they got rid of Brandon Staley, and my God, he should have been gotten rid of, I think, maybe a year and a half ago or so. If that.
At least a year.
Yeah, thank you. But I'm glad he was there, Coach. I'm glad he was there.
I bet you do.
He was. But they also got rid of your GM, and I'd like to hear what Coach has to say about getting rid of the GM.
Well, I mean, I guess 2 to 3 things here. You know, just to address Richie's point as well. I don't believe I wasn't a fan of getting rid of the GM. I understand the business acumen of it, but it's twofold for me because I don't think he did a horrible job in personnel. Right. I think in certain cases he landed a couple of decent, mid-round guys. He definitely had pretty much, hit the outside of Quentin Johnson, who's TBD. I think his first round picks in large part, in percentage wise, has been pretty good. His first 3 rounds have been pretty good. So, Stuart, what's happening?
Good to see you, Stu.
I think in large part, I think his drafting has been well. I think what got him canned along with Staley is the simple fact that his coaching hires have been trash. Like, I think the 4 coaches he's hired, 3 or 4 coaches he's hired, he hired McCoy, he hired Lynn, he hired Staley. So at least 3 coaches he's hired hadn't panned out. So I think that his coaching selection and his coaching, him tying himself to these coaches that have gotten us, behind the 8 ball in several different occasions is ultimately the reason why he was not fired. Well, the reason why he was fired. I don't agree with it. I would have given him one more year for this fact. It's the simple fact that he is the proprietor of what our cap situation is going to look like in 2024. So I think that because we're going to be in such cap purgatory, I think that we have to let him fix it. I think that because he's the person that is the curator of it, and I think he's the person that needs to get it back in, good standing before you decide to move on. And again, like I said, outside of coaching hiring, he's been decent. So I'm not a big Tom Telesco hater. Definitely was a big Brandon Staley hater, but definitely not a big Tom Telesco hater. So I would at least give him one more year to fix it. Try to figure out a way to get a slam dunk hire for a coach, and then went from there. But if you felt like as an organization he was the issue when it comes down to him hiring coaches and he wasn't getting the job done, then he's in the way as well. Because if they're letting him just do the hiring and the firing per se, then basically you're letting them pay. I'm giving the man a job and let him do it, which most owners should do. And if he can't, he's not adequate at that job, then he has to go as well. You replace him, let the new GM hire a new coach, and we start over and start anew, hopefully. So that aspect of it, I think that it was probably why he got fired, is because his coaching hires. But holistically, I think he did a decent job as GM. I'm not mad at him. I'm definitely more of a fan of his than I was of AJ Smith, who was our previous GM. He was completely and utterly terrible.
Yeah, he would have to improve to suck.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah, I got you covered, Coach. I got you covered, brother.
Appreciate it. So yeah, AJ Smith was completely utterly horrible. I couldn't stand his guts. I was glad and singing a happy dance when he was fired. But yeah, I think that was the biggest problem. Now, when it comes down to personnel and evaluation, I tend to agree with Richie. I can kind of agree with both of your points to a degree. That I think that you should, in certain cases, in certain positions, in certain areas, evaluate talent who's going to be here next year. If a guy that you know is not going to be on the roster because you can't afford him, his contract is up, you can't afford him. You're under the 8 ball when it comes to the cap. You're already in the red $40 million before you even start the offseason. Then, certain guys are just going to be too expensive. So, you move on from them. You bring in a person that's cheaper, and you also have to take into the account that Justin Herbert's contract is going to kick in here soon. So we're going to be definitely in a different ball game with different graphic when it comes down to the cap. So we're going to need inexpensive talent, and this is what I was talking to Richie about earlier. You're going to need inexpensive and effective talent to be able to do things for you at key positions. So, you can't have two $20 million receivers. You can't have two $20 million edge rushers. You can't have two $20 million tackles. It's not in the cards. So, so you have to figure out ways to get cheaper and productive at certain levels, i.e. rookies, practice squad players, and or the draft in order to fill these voids, because you still got to be able to field a successful and competent football team. So I think that's where it lies at and what they should be doing in certain stretches, especially the guys you drafted this year. Like, I literally be everybody from top to bottom that was a draft pick last year, they should be playing in a large space, because that's your future. That you got these guys for these 3 to 4 more years. So that's who you should be focusing on. Deion Henley, Tui Pelotu, Quinn Johnston in the last space. Give him as many targets as possible. Scott Maylock, Jordan McFadden. Give these guys the opportunity. Let Darius Davis play more receiver. Give these guys who are your rookies in your future as many opportunities as you possibly can. And again, that goes back to my argument about Max Duggan. I feel like for my money and my efforts, Max Duggan has way more potential and juice than Asen Stick ever did. So why you keep playing games with him and put him on a practice squad, put him on the active roster, keep playing with him and not letting him play and see what he does against live bullets, to Richie's point. If you see him go against live bullets and he can do anything noteworthy, you have a competent backup. And let's be honest, a competent backup is going to be a commodity here soon. Mm-hmm. Competent backups are going to be commodities because quarterbacks are getting hurt at a large clip. And to have a competent backup that can save your life for a few games is going to be a thing in the near future. So if Max Duggan can do it, find out now, and you move forward with him. If not, you find somebody else. But you got to know. Because, again, practice reps against your own guys. I know this from personal experience. Former player. If you practice against your own guys is one thing. Going against other teams and your opposition is a whole different ball game. Under that gun, under that whistle is a whole different ball game when you're under that clock. So you got to see it in live action in order to get a full assessment on what they can and cannot do.
Yeah. So I completely agree with your assessment on Dugan there versus Stick. And the one thing I'll kind of generally not push back on, but I at least would kind of want to highlight here, to maybe be the right approach. What are the 3 things that a GM is responsible for? One would be drafting players, talent for your roster. So
personnel.
So inbound new talent. The second is to manage the salary cap for your roster in its current iteration. And then the third is to, well, I'll say there's 4 actually. The third is to ensure that the roster meshes with the vision that the current head coach needs, and also for you as the general manager, given your experience, correct the nonsense that your potentially inexperienced head coach, and I'm using Staley as an example there, may not know he needs, but does actually need. And so that would be the third. And then the last one would actually just be from a general perspective, which is hiring and firing personnel. Because while the GM's job is largely to hire and fire kind of the scouting staff and the head coach, the GM does also play a large role in the recommendation and the hiring and firing of coordinators as well, or at least can some of the head coach stuff when it comes to that, if they are so inclined to do so. So you have those 4 main things. And I would argue that your GM certainly did not manage the cap particularly well, because you're in a rough spot coming into next season. You're going to have to potentially lose some talented guys. I would also argue that he has pigeonholed himself into certain position groups when it comes to the draft, which has put you at a disadvantage from a diversity perspective on your, particularly the offensive side of your ball. As an example, and I'll elaborate, name a guy on your roster who is a speed wide receiver that can stretch the field that is under the height of 6'4".
Darius Davis.
Right. And how has he done?
You haven't given an opportunity to do it. He hadn't played.
Right. So you got one dude, but you don't necessarily have a variety of wide receiver types. And I'm kind of pointing that out because we kind of collectively agreed on that coming into the season, where we were kind of doing our kind of like roster reviews, right? Which is, you have one type of wide receiver that is like, if you're this height and this speed and that, then the Chargers are likely interested in you, is kind of like the running joke of that pod. And that's my point, right? Is you need to construct your roster to make it versatile and complex enough that it is more of a challenge for opposing defenses to go up against. Similarly, in the running back room and just things in general, you need to make sure you have the right players to mesh together. And then obviously you have your cap issues. So I'd argue drafting has not been great, but it hasn't been horrible. I'd argue that the roster composition from a salary cap perspective has not been great. And I'd also argue that, I think this is basically a slam dunk at this point, that his hiring and firing of coaching personnel has been atrocious.
That part I definitely agree on.
Yeah.
I mean, we can split hairs on the idea of him adjusting the cap and things of that nature, because I think that until the J.C. Jackson, failure, I think he was in pretty decent standing, because it's really, like I said, we're about $42 million in the red right now, and $22 million of it is J.C. Jackson's. So, I mean, you look at it from one perspective, that you got 4 guys making $20 million. You really only had to make a decision on one guy to get under the cap if you didn't have to cut J.C. Jackson. So it wasn't a horrible job. They just really, what they did was, in a sense, push everybody's money forward in order to maximize the potential of the roster while Justin Herbert's on his rookie deal. Then you have to go back and reevaluate. I mean, the Saints are masters at this. They did the whole entire time Drew Brees was there as a quarterback. They just retooled things, pushed things forward, and they renegotiated and reworked money to get underneath the cap every single year. And they managed to do it. Again, they wasn't signing big-time free agents, but they kept their talent in-house. So, I think that was the mindset what Tom Telesco was trying to do when it comes down to the money front. Again, the J.C. Jackson thing was a failure, and he's still failing in New England, because he's being healthy scratched like 2 or 3 games this year for Bill Belichick, and then, he's up there in New England not winning anything. He should be playing and had no problems. He should be happy. But again, he is clearly a failure and a personality thing for him that's causing him to have issues right here and right now. Once you've gotten your bag for the first time, maybe you just know how to handle all that money. I don't know. But regardless of that, he's clearly the problem, and you just caught a bad one. It happens. It happens. You're not going to strike the iron every single time you do something when it comes down to signing a big time guy. Ask Abel Hainsworth in the Commanders. Gave him $100 million, and he shit the bed every time he got on the field. So, it's a rough business, and it is what it is. But again, I don't give Tom Telesco an F grade. I give him a C. I'll give him a C plus in regards to being a GM. Like I said, his coaching was bad. Personnel was decent. And then to your point, Richie, to a degree, the idea of drafting, could come at the behest or the recommendation more so from the coaches, because he knows what he wants in his scheme, and he just goes out there and gets it, and you just live with it because that's what the coach wants. Because we just could have he could be a heightist, because I think that glowingly, every time he drafted a receiver, they've been tall, outside of Darius Davis and a couple of other names. But, outside of that, I think that most people that he's picked and most people he's gone after has been at the recommendation of the head coach and what they wanted to do with a certain prototype of a player. So, yeah, I think that's where it landed for me.
Hey, Richie, while we're on the subject as well, and Coach, thanks for the segue. That's another thing that the Raiders have not figured out yet. Because, like I said, those interim monikers on Kelly, the interim moniker on Pierce, those have to be defined whether they're going to be there or not. Now, I would love, as of right now, based upon the gut feel of what he has done and for what people have said, like I said, Kelly has done more for the roster than what friggin' Ziegler did. Ziegler didn't really know, per reports, about the guys on the roster. So if Kelly meshes well with Pierce, then they will go out and they will do that. They will get the guys that will be for the team. But again, Kelly has not been named a GM yet, okay? And until the Raiders name the GM, and I saw that, Biggie Bronco was talking about John Gruden, and I'll address that as well. Biggie Bronco, Gruden is not under contract anymore. He was paid off. So please know that you are incorrect there. Okay, there is conjecture about Gruden coming back, and God knows I can't. Oh my God, I do not want that. But Gruden might come back into an advisory role to Mark and not necessarily a coaching role, because I actually think that that coaching train is way, way down the track when it comes to John Gruden. Okay, I think that Mark trusts Gruden a lot, and he would have him in that advisory role, vice a coaching role, and I think that would be where he would be. But he is not under contract; he's been paid off. So, sir, you are incorrect on that. We'll see what happens. I don't want Gruden. I don't want Gruden at all.
Captain,
I don't want Gruden around.
There's another interesting element of the John Gruden saga, which is, I don't want to go too deep down this rabbit hole, but I think it's an important
also
piece
about the court stuff, and that has to be
correct. Right now, John Gruden is very close to likely getting a form of a ruling it's leaning, at least it looks like at this point, where the courts will rule in his favor in terms of taking the NFL into a courtroom. And one of John Gruden's staples within that suit that he has presented is that the NFL has effectively pushed him out of the league. And if he were to end up in a position where he is actually getting paid for his services, it would actually undermine his court case that he has going through the courts with the NFL. So I would actually expect John Gruden to not get paid for a consultancy role, but he has an absolute deep-rooted connection to the Davis family and the now Las Vegas Raiders. And I could absolutely see Mark Davis, especially, since this has seemingly kind of simmered down with John Gruden a little bit, bringing him and poaching him, if you will, from a free consultant with Derek Carr over in New Orleans. I see him coming over to the Raiders in a similar position, especially if Pierce is retained as a rookie head coach, because John Gruden is a seasoned veteran, both head coach and quasi-GM role. So he would be a rather interesting pick to act as a kind of a pro bono mentor.
Well, I'll tell you what, keep him. Honestly, I don't want Gruden I don't want Gruden in Pierce's ear for anything other than maybe pep talks, and keep him away from Kelly if he is retained as a GM. John Gruden as a GM sucks worse than John Gruden as a coach. And I know this because I live in Tampa, and he almost single-handedly destroyed that franchise based upon what he did when he came over there. He gave them one game, guys, one game. And Tampa has lived on that one game. Before they beat the Chiefs a couple of years ago, they were living off that one game, because everything after that one game was just horrible. And, Barkley would say, it's terrible. Yeah. So I don't want John Gruden doing anything other than maybe advising football-wise, this, that, and everything. But I don't want anything specific. Keep him away from the GM and the head coach. I'm sorry. That's just the way I feel about that. The one thing I do want to see is that John Gruden has stated in his suit against the NFL, he wants it all to burn down. He wants it all out there. And he has stated in the past, and I hope he's not full of shit, but he has stated in the past that he wants all of the exposure out. He wants all of the people to know exactly what was going on. And he has stated that he will not take it out. He will not be bought out.
Yep.
I hope he is true to his word on that. But unfortunately, as time goes by, you get a little bit softer in your stance. And we'll see if he actually will go through that. But again, on the 11th of January, which is my anniversary, by the way, so I'll make sure that I know what's going on that date. I can't forget it. We'll see what happens. But again, I don't want John Gruden in a coaching capacity. I don't want him in a GM capacity. I want him as maybe a technical advisor on superfluous stuff. Let the GM pick the coach and let the coach pick because the best thing that needs to be done on this franchise is if we have Kelly as the GM and if we have Pierce as the head coach, we need a damn good offensive coordinator. That's what we need. We need an offensive coordinator. I don't want nothing that has the initials JG imprint on top of that. Because John Gruden, as a coach, would coach him up just enough to get a lead, and he would take that foot off the gas. He would take the foot off the neck. He would do everything in his power to let the other team come back. And what Pierce is, and what Pierce espouses, is that, oh, no, we're going to go for more. Keep that pedal down. And he said that at the halftime. Okay? He said out at the half, keep going, keep that pedal down. And that's what I like about Antonio Pierce. And that is definitely nothing that has to do with John friggin' Gruden. So
let me ask you this question, Cap. Let me ask you this question, and Richie, chime in as well if you're so inclined. Do you feel like because John Gruden's suing the NFL, do you feel like the league as a whole is going to be, I guess you can say, very standoffish with him having any capacity of any employment with the league if you're suing the league? Because in the past, people that have sued the league have typically not gotten employment, while they're going through the proceedings and thereafter in certain regards. You sue the league, that pretty much writes your death certificate as far as having a job in the league going forward. Do you think that is even a possibility? I know, Coach Cap, you don't want it, obviously, but, the rumors are the rumors. So do you think that if Mark Davis went ahead and pulled the trigger on that and give him any type of advisory role or whatever the case may be, do you think they'll make the other owners in the office, in the front office of the league, kind of turn their eye down on them like you're really doing that when he's suing us?
So you're saying that the NFL would even be more a-holes to the Raiders like they haven't been in the past because of Al Davis's family, because of having a personal grudge dating back from Pete Rozelle to Paul Tagliabue to the schmuck that's in-house now? Like there isn't already, some hate and dissension with the Raiders? Like
so would it make it worse?
Like Pete Rozelle is the guy that nixed the trade when the Raiders traded for John Elway years ago to the Colts, and he said anybody but the Raiders, and the Broncos ended up giving Elway for Mark Herman and a left tackle to the Colts. No, there's nothing there, Coach. Not at all. No, I'm
just asking. I mean, would you make even more of a deeper enemy if you did that? Is my question.
I mean, it's kind of hard to go deeper than the center of the earth, man.
Yeah, I'm just asking.
I'm
just doing my job as an analyst.
And I appreciate it. Like I say, it's a good question, but I don't know how much deeper we can get effed without benefit of KY, Gravy.
Well, they say you don't know what the bottom is until you really hit it. Now, have you hit it?
Yeah, I'll talk. I got some references, and you can call them up on the phone, and the ladies will be sure to let you know if I hit it or not. But when it comes to the Raiders,
that was a good one. I like that. I like what you did there. That's a good one. That's a good one. That was a good one.
It's been a couple weeks since I actually got a chance to smooth that in there. But what I'm saying is, it depends. Like I said, will it hurt the Raiders? Hey, I'm sorry, folks. The Raiders play 11 on 22 football every game. It's our 11 versus their 11. And the other 12, 10 to 12, which is the officials on the field and the schmucks in New York. And if you don't believe me, how about the interception to end the game practically against the Vikings, where the guy intercepts the ball from Aiden Quinn and drops it. It was muffed. It was a bobble. It was a cat. It hit the guard. So they go because they have to go to New York because it's a turnover, right? And you're trying to tell me that they didn't see it when everybody that was in the friggin' stadium saw it was the boom? Come on, man. Man. It's 11 on 22, baby. Every game. Every game.
I don't have enough information to debate it. I'm just saying that,
I got some. Make sure you hit NFL Nation Live. There's the segue as well. NFL Nation Live, where Ref Guru, a retired NFL referee, will talk to you about such things, about for your team, who is going to be the white hat in the crew and how bad your team is going to get screwed because whether they're good, bad, or indifferent. NFL Nation Live, 6 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock Pacific. on Thursdays on this channel and the NFL Nation live show. There you go. And thanks, Coach, for that great segue.
Not a problem. That's what I'm here for.
I think Goodell has shown basically through his actions that he feels that he is immune. I mean,
he's Teflon. He's Teflon. That what you're trying to say?
Yeah, and so I would originally, like, my gut reaction and my initial kind of just saying the thing out loud that comes to mind first is, in today's day and age, you can't get away with that type of behavior anymore.
No.
Which is I'm gonna block that guy out simply because they are attempting to stand up for their, whether employment rights or whatever the case may be. The problem is that what Goodell and the NFL have shown with the Gruden case is they seemingly just, I mean, especially Goodell, just doesn't care. I mean, here, let's just put this in perspective. There was 250,000 emails.
And 6 came out.
And 6 emails came out, and every one of the 6 emails targeted John Gruden.
Amazing.
I mean, the odds of, like, literally, you'd have a better chance at winning the lottery 5 times over than having that be the case. I'm sorry, it's just the answer's no. But the answer is just no. So it's clear to me that John Gruden was a target. There's really only 1 or 2 people that could have even done it with that level of precision. And I'm sorry, I truly just think that Goodell was likely the mastermind and orchestrator of that, because John Gruden, for several weeks leading up to that, was publicly calling Roger Goodell out for his mishandling of situations. And Goodell got upset and said, "Let me show you." And that, to me, makes a tremendous amount of sense. Until someone can actually come forward and say, here is empirical proof it was not Goodell's order, and that some rando from the Washington Commanders, who was obviously a team by a different name at the time, came forward and actually instructed that instead, then I'm left with no other conclusion but to say 1 + 1 = 2, which is Gruden critiqued Goodell, Goodell instructed someone else to retaliate, and we are now where we're at. And that is really, from what I can tell, I mean, surely the NFL can put forth communications to say, no, it never happened.
Hey, for those that don't remember where this all came from, because you got to go back to jump. The reasons why this is such a big thing is because Dan Snyder, the owner of the Redskins, I'll do the official things, Redskins, a Washington football team, Commanders, was under investigation because his cheerleaders had a bunch of pics that went out with showing tits and bush that the photographers did on the slide, and there was a bunch of other things that were really raucous and raunchy. So they were investigated about that. And while they were doing the investigation, who is the general manager of the Redskins, the Washington football team, the Commanders? A guy by the name of Bruce Allen. Okay, who was the former GM of the Raiders and whose good friend was John Gruden. He gets all these wonderful pictures, and he's doing the buddy hookup. Yo, John, check out the tits on this one. Sorry, folks, that is probably an actual quote, because they were sending these emails back and forth, and all of this good, juicy stuff came out because Bruce was contacting Gruden because they were buddies, right? And this was the investigation for the Redskins / football team / Commanders. And of the 650,000 or 250,000 emails, 6 of them came out that dealt with Gruden, because Gruden was on Goodell's ass. And this was also while Gruden was with ESPN and not in the freaking league. So let's go there. It stinks to high effing heaven.
That's actually, as much as I'm obviously not a Raiders fan, that's actually the most important and critical part about this, which is the emails themselves, while we'll say not tasteful, and that's being generous and kind, they were all sent while he was not employed by the NFL. They were sent when he was employed by ESPN, who is by all accounts almost more strict than the NFL is when it comes to, issues of that nature. And yet he was not fired from ESPN. So I think that should, fit within the neat and tidy package there. And so it's interesting.
And Coach, I agree with you. Like I said, I am not condoning John's actions, his statements, what he said. I'm not condoning that. He was racist, sexist, homophobic. Big three. Racist, sexist, and homophobic. Got it. That was him 10 years ago or 12 years ago now, or whenever it was. Yeah, has he changed? Maybe, maybe not. I will say that Tony Dungy states that John Gruden is not the biggest racist F that he thinks he is. There are people that have come to a thing. But as far as him being sexist and homophobic, I'm sure he probably still has those things. But all of the things together is what got him fired. And again, that was on him. He was wrong. But it's convenient to have a scapegoat and let all the other stuff wash. And that is why he wants all of that thing involved in discovery, because that will take down the league. But yeah, Coach, I got you. If you're a racist, if you're a sexist, if you're a homophobic, you're a living, breathing arsehole. And you need to make sure in this day and age that you're not of that ilk. Thank you.
I totally agree. I'm glad you said it. You said it, because I've been on that train for a good while, because you got to realize that, understand the circumstances. People are harping on the overarching narrative of it being a hit job, but it does not absolve the crime.
Exactly. You're right.
So that's the biggest problem I always had with this situation, is that regardless of who John Gruden is and who he was, whether he was targeted or not, that narrative aside, he did what he did. He said what he said. He's been documented, doing certain things. So that part you cannot absolve him for. And I would also argue that's a black eye to a person that employs him going forward, because of his history in his past. So again, whether or not you can prove without a shadow of a doubt, because people do make mistakes. You may at one point or another give him a second chance because you feel like he's changed, but he's going to have to do a lot of retribution in order to prove people, prove to people that he's a changed man. So that's another argument that you have to account when you decide whether or not you're going to employ him going forward. Because so you can't just automatically give him a job and say, kumbaya. You can't do that. He has to, from a public relations perspective, he has to show attrition. He has to show maturity and say that I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago. Until he does that, then you have to tread lightly when it comes to John Gruden, in my opinion.
Hey, and Biggie Bronco, I see your comment as well. I'm not saying, it's like, you can have your views. If you said you're not a racist, I'm glad. You're saying that there are other things that you might not agree with that are being shoved down your throat. I agree with that as well. But in today's day and age, in this PC world, you would be best to make sure that you are so level and do not say such things, because it will come back and bite you in the ass. Okay.
And everything's recorded and documented. Everything's recorded and documented now. Yep.
That's right.
This is my whole point, though, is I think that some people across the board have made comments, and I don't care nationality, I don't care race, I don't care location, I don't care any about. I really don't. It means nothing to me. The point is what you're truly discussing here is verbal discrimination, right? Like, I think we can boil it down to that. Like, it's verbal discrimination. Now, I don't think there's a place for that in any workplace, and there's generally employment laws that protect against that type of stuff from occurring out in the open. I do think that there is a difference between verbalizing things aloud and private conversations, communications between friends. Doesn't mean that I condone the conversation. It just means that I do think there's a difference between the two. And on top of that, I think we also have to be very, very careful that if you're going to go scorched earth on one side and not on the other, when we hear other comments about other people, other things, other stuff like that that are equally, or maybe not equally, but certainly similarly themed, I think we need to be very, very careful about what direction we go down, A, on a publicly broadcasted podcast, two, in our personal lives, and just when we start talking about stripping people's employment. Because I'm sure that we can all go back into our past, whether or not you want to admit it or not publicly, where you have made comments that you're like, I am so glad there was not a freaking camera on, and things of that nature. Now, does that make you any one of those isms? Probably not, and likely not. And because I think everyone has done something that they wish they had not done. But at the same time, I think we need to be very, very, very careful about stripping employment, especially, I'm on the wrong side of the border because we don't have this wonderful thing called the First Amendment, which is why I'm a Canadian, but I wish I was born in the States, right? But you have the First Amendment protection there in the U.S., and that affords an awful lot of leeway, and I think that needs to be abided by because, frankly, that's what makes America great. And hi, Matt. So I just think that there's a whole bunch of stuff in there that needs unpacking, and I think it's very complicated, a complicated thing to kind of go into all the nuanced detail. But that doesn't mean that you have to agree with what was said. That just means that you should be able to approach it understanding all the nuances involved and not necessarily go all the way down the rabbit hole on any one issue just because you disagree with something that was said, which obviously I do, but I do think that we do need to take a step back and look at all angles of that situation. Let's put it this way. You might not want to go for a beer with the dude, right? But you can also then say that he said was wrong, but then also say that, that shouldn't necessarily prevent him from being gainfully employed. And it still may impact your decision on whether or not you're going to support the organization that does choose to employ them. And all of those things can in fact be true all at the same time because such is life. And I think that those are all fair stances to take across the board because we all have the freedom to kind of make decisions ourselves, right? So,
John, I don't want to.
John Gruden doesn't need a job. Let's be honest.
No,
he doesn't need a job. He's well off. He doesn't need a job. He may want a job to have something to do, but he does not need a job. And to be honest with you, when you're in a public eye, you're air quote classified as a public figure when you're a head coach or an analyst or GM. When it comes down to representing a team, you have to be, publicly friendly by most. People have to, be okay with you as in your personality to gravitate to you. Sure. So that particular idea of it is one of those things that's a red flag for certain people at this point when it comes to John Gruden and his history. So that's the only thing I'm really driving at. And let's be honest, he has way more avenues to do things as far as employment than coaching football. He can do a lot of things when it comes down to football. He can go back and doing his film series. He can go back to working in media. He can do a lot of things that make money and be involved in the game. He doesn't necessarily have to coach and be a public figure, to make money. So we're not saying the man he shouldn't be employed by anybody on earth. No, we're not saying that. We're just saying being a public figure and having people, listen to you and be able to take direction from you is going to issue if you have a checker pass and you have certain things, you feel certain ways about certain people. So I think that's where it gets dicey for me. That's where it gets dicey for me. But again, if he shows attrition and he shows he's a changed man, then again, everybody deserves a second chance when you clean yourself up.
Yep, I agree. So with that in mind, I'm going to quickly move on to the Lions game because I have some very similarly vain comments actually to kind of the theme of the Raiders Chargers game. I have long been Coach, we've been doing this now for quite some time. Captain, you and I have known each other a little bit longer than this show has been going on. We were connected on my former show to this one here. Anyone who knows me knows that I basically have one mantra, which is build from the trenches. I've been saying that since Coach, since we've met. Basically, that's kind of my whole thing. And I stick with that as a football kind of staple is you build from the trenches. And as a result from that, the other kind of add-on to that is you would need to then build from the inside out, which is you keep the interior of that line solid and secure, and then you build out from there. The challenge that I had with that game is it showcased to me what I've been saying all season long, which is don't get fooled because you've beaten teams that are not perhaps successful in certain areas of the field. Once you start ratcheting up the talent level where you can't key in on one or two guys, then what?
Hold on. Cap, I love that. I absolutely love that. Kardashian, that's good. I gotta give you credit for that. That is good. Shout out to Wi-Fi Willie. That is good though. That is gold. That is gold.
Yeah,
I gotta give you props.
Well, see, I've used that term before when there was the big car debate. You either a Kardashian or a Kardashian.
Good one. I like that.
That's how you got the camps. One or the other. You're a Kardashian or you're a Kardashian, and neither the Twix, whatever that expression of Twix and Twain,
Big Twix.
Not betwixt either or whatever.
Okay.
You're a Kardashian or a Kardashian.
Got it. I like that though. I haven't heard that one before. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah,
I come up with them every now and again.
Yeah, you're a little singer there.
So, tying back in, it was pretty solid, I'm not going to lie. But getting back into the Lions-Broncos game, we saw several things and several issues in that game that really reared their ugly head. And as Broncos fans, we really should be honest with ourselves. A few things. One, our offensive line is nowhere near as good as we think it is. You can play certain teams that are lower caliber or have fewer options to really put pressure on the quarterback or get penetration through the offensive line. And if you don't have a good enough offensive line in order to truly protect your quarterback or be adaptive enough on the offensive side of the ball in order to do the right things to protect, you're going to get beaten. The other thing that I believe that really highlighted is it further showed that what I've said all along, and you can pretty much vouch for this, I was never a huge fan of the Russell Wilson trade. That was not my thing. It was never my jam, never what I wanted, never thought that he was a great option. I did think that he was going to be a better option with Hackett than he was because his style actually better meshed with the Hackett offensive system. But then Hackett came here and didn't even run a system, so it didn't make any sense. So what we saw in that game there was Russ didn't realign protection. He didn't, call the play, come back, readjust, put guys in certain places and do the things that you expect from a veteran quarterback. And he's also missing areas of the field like he was before. It's just Sean Payton is that good of a coach, and in my opinion, has really masked many of Wilson's flaws this season with his game plan. And at some point, if you're just up against a far superior team, those cracks are going to start opening up again, and you cannot overcome them just because you're up against much better competition. And lastly,
one thing there, Richie, by the way, and I'm going to give some plaudits to the MHRT network, because not only did I get a chance to hang out with Coach last night on the Lockdown Defense podcast, because he's just a wonderful guy, with the other two coaches that are with him, I got a chance to pop over to MHRT with the other gentlemen that were there, and they actually knew who I was, which was surprising because it wasn't here. But they had a discussion about Drew Lock. And they were saying, would the Broncos be better off now had they continued that going down the pipe?
Hold on, Richard, can I answer for you? Can I answer for you?
Yes.
Yes. According to Richie, yes. Because I vehemently remember, I remember very clearly how much of a proponent that Richie was of Drew Lock.
Yes,
from the very beginning, before Russell Wilson was a thing. Before when we do coaching searches and everything like that, when they're doing quarterback searches, he was a very big proponent of Drew Lock's talent. So he's definitely a Drew Lock fan when it comes down to his talent level. Didn't want to see him traded. So I just want to be clear that from a different voice that is not Richie for his advocacy right now.
I said
he definitely loves Drew Lock. Absolutely.
Yep.
And I do, and I have reasons for it too. It's not like I'm just like a blind Drew Lock supporter.
Well, based on Monday night, you got a hell of a case.
yeah. But here's the thing, right? So here's an example. I have a few stacked things that make me stay different from most Denver Broncos fans, and this is kind of where this is why I have the view that I have. I believe that John Elway was far more involved in the Denver Broncos far later into the Broncos organization than most NFL fans believe. I believe that John Elway had a hand in firing of Rick Scangarello. I believe Scangarello started disagreeing with some of the front office decisions because it wasn't meshing with his offensive system. And I believe John Elway didn't like a young guy, because he was obviously younger, questioning what was being put on the field. And I believe it was a bit of an ego hit. That's my opinion, for what it's worth. And he got fired as a result on the door. They then brought in Pat Shurmur, who is a yes man, but a seasoned veteran offensive coordinator who had never had an offense that ever averaged above 15th in the league ever in his career. So he's literally bottom half, 20th or 25th. Sorry, it's 25th. So he's never been above the top half throughout the entirety of his career as an average. So why bring in a dude that has never been in that top echelon? And then above and beyond that, you also saw Rick Scangarello and Drew Lock finish the first season that they were together, where they were actually allowed to kind of play together, with a 4-1 record. So Drew Lock did well with an outside zone scheme, which is what Scangarello ran. He loved tight end and that type and style of play. He's kind of a gunslinger, which typically does well in that outside zone scheme as well. Oddly enough, Russell Wilson typically does well in that sort of scheme as well, as does Aaron Rodgers and a few other quarterbacks in the league. So these are kind of the frameworks and the foundation as to why I make the comments that I did. I'm not blindly saying that I think Drew Lock would have been better for the Denver Broncos regardless of circumstances or situation. I'm saying that I don't believe Drew Lock was given the right foundational options and foundation in general to succeed with the Denver Broncos, and that's why he didn't do well. They basically pulled the rug out from under him and said, well, I guess it didn't work. It's like, well, of course not. The dude couldn't stand on his feet because you tripped him. And I would have loved to have seen Scangarello and Drew Lock with drafting to aim towards that outside zone scheme after Drew Lock's rookie year, when he stepped in for a Joe Flacco who looked like absolute hot garbage. So that's kind of the stacked stance and view that I have, which is totally different than like 95% of all Broncos country out there, which is fine. But at the same time, I've largely predicted the Broncos seasons and successes better than they have anyway. So, you get to choose who you want to listen to.
Fair. Yeah. So let me get back to Willie Snyder's comment. I wanted to highlight that. He said it earlier in the chat. We weren't on that topic yet. So I just want to bring that back up to your point, to you, Rich, to kind of get your insight on what he was asking. He was on MHRT's channel, so I wanted to highlight his question. I think it was a good one.
So I had two takeaways from that. And I'll be honest, I cannot confirm which it likely was or if either are correct, but these are the two takeaways I had. One is Peyton was just losing his mind because he was so pissed off about the call. So that's kind of option A. That being said, that's one. However, I think that's an unlikely option because I don't know if you actually saw the words being mouthed. He was certainly directing what he was saying towards Russ. So I actually believe that my second take is actually accurate and probably more likely what actually took place. What I believe actually took place was Sean Payton was very upset and angry at Russ for not doing what most veteran quarterbacks do. So, for example, the Tom Brady's, Patrick Mahomes, as much as you hate him, he does the same thing. The Manning, all of the veteran-style quarterbacks, when there is a questionable play that occurred that was potentially in your favor, they slow play it to the line of scrimmage. They do not run a hurry-up offense to try to get another play off. They do not try to do the thing to maximize and catch the other team off guard, because they know enough to slow up that line of scrimmage to allow their coach the back and forth that they need through the mic, et cetera, from the replay guys on their own team, in order to afford the coach the ability to throw a red flag, especially true when it's 6 points. So there's almost some leeway that the coaches will typically give quarterbacks on the field if it's just like, a couple yard gain or, a first down perhaps, as long as they have like another two downs to get that first down. Where it kind of crosses that line is you're potentially plus or minus 6 points at this point. Or we'll say 3 or 4 points, depending on the extra point at that stage. And I believe that is actually the true reason why Peyton lost it at Russ, which is, dude, you know better. What the heck? And he used obviously more colorful words than that. Is your problem? Yeah. And you're like, what's your problem? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? That. And I believe that is exactly why he was upset, is because he expected Russ to act in the mold of what he expects of a veteran quarterback. And instead, he didn't read the room and made a mistake.
Fair enough. Yeah, I thought Willie's question was pretty good, so I thought I'd bring that back up. But that was a good take, Rich. Yeah. So I mean, one can speculate. We don't truly know all the answers when it comes down to that situation. But I will say this: above everything else, you realize that kind of like take the Bill Belichick page out of his book. Nobody's above reproach. If I can yell at the franchise quarterback, in that matter, everybody else should, understand that they can be criticized as well. So I think that message was clear in that moment, if nothing else.
Yeah, and I also think that there is a clear line in the sand drawn as well between how Russ was treated under Hackett when he was here and how Russ is just one of the other 53 men on the roster right now. And I think that's an important thing. Frankly, I think it's important for the entire roster. If Russ makes a mistake, then he should be yelled, screamed at, and told what he should and shouldn't do, both in meetings and in practice, and frankly on the sidelines too. It's kind of what I was saying on last week's pod, where, and frankly, Alex isn't here, but we saw Mahomes do it on the sideline, except not at the receiver, but started cursing him out when he sat on the bench. And that was yet another Tony drop pass. And Mahomes just lost his mind as I don't trust that guy anymore. And so, again, Mahomes is, I believe at that point, intentionally showing poise because he didn't want the heat from what happened last game to happen again. So I think that played into that as well. But nonetheless, it's clear that he felt the same way, where obviously his wide receivers are just not helping him out. And he really could not let in, and rightfully so. I think Peyton was in the similar vein, which is, dude, you've been in the league 10, 12 years. You literally ought to know better at this point than to do certain things. Or I actually do agree with Big Bronco. There is kind of door number 3, which is, I had designed plays that I wanted you to run. Why didn't you run them? That is a valid option 3. And if you want to know why that could be a valid option number 3, look no further than the touchdown that won the game prior to the Lions game. That was a clearly Sean Payton scripted play with a wide open Troutman in the end zone there for that just easy tossing pitch and catch kind of thing. And so it's quite possible that Peyton was pissed off that Russ audibled out of a play that he had designed, and it obviously failed. And therefore that is, I believe, actually a very valid potential third door that could have been the reason for the screaming and yelling.
Fair enough.
It's by and large, though, I think it's somewhat irrelevant in terms of that one series of plays. We're outright just taken behind the shed and beaten badly on both lines, both the offensive line and the defensive line. And you can't win games that way. You need to dominate and win the lines of scrimmage. And you can't lose both. You might be able to lose on the offensive line of scrimmage, but then maybe compensate it with, short passes and things like that to kind of get the ball out and win. You can't fail on both. You can't fail on the defense and the offense. You have to win at least one of them.
So, I mean, that's your overall, I guess you can say, overarching takeaway from the game. Before we get into next week's action, that's your overall synopsis of what happened and where you faltered at from a team perspective?
I agree. I do. And I think that can be an exploited fact for some of these other games coming up, which is you have a defensive genius in Bill Belichick. And I'm sorry, but it's just a fact. The dude is a savant on the defensive side of the ball.
Oh, yeah. Nobody's arguing that. Yeah, nobody's arguing that at all.
And so he's going to look at some of those things and say that could be a potential way to even upset the Broncos, even with how poor the Patriots have been. If he embarrasses them offensively and they can't put points on the board, he just literally needs to try to work on an offensive game plan that puts like 3 to 6 points up. Right? If you completely knock the Broncos offensive line off kilter again, I mean, that could be the make or break part of the game, right? And so I think that's an important piece to consider as well. And then that basically almost all but knocks the Broncos out of the playoffs at that stage, or gives us like a 7% chance to make the playoffs at that point.
You're right next to Cap with the 7%. You're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
But I'm just more realistic in saying at that point there you're done, so you may as well just start churning the back end of your roster to see what you got.
Yeah.
Hey, well, I tell you what there, Rich, and I don't remember what the odds were a couple years ago when the Raiders had to win their last 5 under Rich Bisaccia, and they needed a few people to lose. Shit happens.
It does.
Okay? Shit happens. So, I mean, until such a time that you're told it ain't happening, you go for it. Okay? And that is why I firmly believe if the Raiders do the first portion of that trifecta and beat the Chiefs on Christmas Day, especially with the win in Indy, because that's going to need to happen as well, but it's got to start on Christmas, that the last game of the season, which I will be at in Allegiant, will be flexed to Sunday Night Football. I firmly believe that because it was flexed for the Raiders Chargers. I almost said the G word, Coach, and I promised you I wasn't going to do that today, so I had to catch myself. But the last game with the Raiders and Chargers a couple years ago, where even if they would have tied, they both would have went, and it would have been one such thing, and they would have kept the Steelers out. But it came to such a point that it's like, no, we're going to win, and we're just going to bring it. And it was Staley on that game that showed his ass. So what exactly did – I can't remember what stupid, idiotic move.
He called a timeout.
Thank you. Okay, I knew it was something. There was a stupid, idiotic move, and then it was Carr said, you know what? Screw it. We're going to win.
Merry Christmas, Anna.
That's what happened. And Anna, take care as well. Merry Christmas to you and all. But that was it. That was the beginning of the epitomal end of Brandon Staley. Probably occurred on that. But they flexed that game because it was such a pivotal game. So don't be surprised if that Raiders-Broncos game might be flexed if things go into the plan.
I also think, Captain, one thing you're also missing there is even if the Raiders are mathematically eliminated from the playoffs at that point, like I'm not trying to belittle your team at all when I make this.
Oh, comment. I got you. I know you're not. I know you're not smugging right now.
No.
You can't smug like the smugster.
No. Okay. But if that game has playoff implications for if the Broncos win, and even if another team has to lose, that might get flexed anyway, just because it's such a storied divisional rivalry.
True.
That it is certainly in that vein where they may flex it anyway, just because there's Sean Payton with name recognition, Russell Wilson with name recognition, Raiders as a brand with name recognition internationally, Broncos with international name recognition. I could totally see that game getting flexed if it's kind of like Broncos win and they're in sort of thing.
And we know where Russell will be on the night before the game, because his wife will probably be playing at Dre's just like she was last year.
Right.
That's true. I'm not saying that as a joke or anything other than that. She had the booking at Dre's nightclub. I hope I might not be saying
she
that.
just gave birth to their third or fourth child, and so that may not actually take place. Yeah. So I mean, when you're dealing with a 3-week or 4-week-old infant at that point, I'm going to say that is a maybe at best.
Right. I don't think that she's off for that run.
No.
This particular time. Yeah. She's a person. She's not just a singer. She don't get up to the mic and just stand there. She's a dancer too. So I doubt highly that she's going to be.
Hey, Riri did the Super Bowl and she was pretty big.
But she was moving though. She was very still.
Well, all you got to do is just do this. You just got to do the Captain.
Okay. Fair. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but Sierra's no more modus operandi is she moves around a lot. So, she's more Beyonce than Aretha Franklin.
All right,
understood. So moving on to next week, guys. Coach, throw over to you and get your take on your upcoming week 16 in terms of where you're at, what you'd like to see. Obviously, you're probably your vantage point has likely changed compared to where it was, but what are you looking for?
If I had time, I would literally print me a shirt that says "Tankfully Tanking."
No, and I wanted to get you on that, Coach. There was nothing that was sardonically stinking. Okay, it was no tactful about that. I wanted to make sure an alliteration was there. I know stinking was.
Within the game aside, the overall overarching point is we're tactfully tanking for the draft.
Okay,
that's the goal. Okay. That's the goal. If we just didn't give a damn at all, we would have gave you 21 points. Like we would have it'd been 63-0. Versus being 63-21. But I digress.
By the way, that first touchdown, friggin' Max Crosby was held for 5 seconds by whoever your friggin' right tackle was in front of God and everybody, and they didn't call it. And one guy.
I wish I'd have said that. I saw a mashup of them showing Crosby and Myles Garrett getting held at an egregious amount, and the referee not calling it. I couldn't up and laugh. I'm like, this is so obvious, and they just put keep the flag in the pocket, and act like they don't see it. Like he's flailing his arms, his jersey being tugged. Like if the guy comes to you after the play and he's all disheveled around the neck.
He got held like this.
Yeah, he got held, but they swallowed their whistle. They swallowed their whistle.
Tell you, I was on. It was the lady. I almost said chick. The lady ref. The big girl. Okay, because I know Sarah Thomas is kind of tall and skinny. The big girl was there as the side, and ref isn't here. I can't remember if it's the side judge or whatever the friggin' her name was. I was like, are you effing kidding me? I mean, there were 3 pass interferences in front of her, and then the holding. This girl, it looked like, well, first off, it looked like she'd have to take a friggin' train to like go to the counter just to get a sandwich at work because she was.
Leave that lady alone. She got to be in shape to be a ref. She got to be in shape.
No, ref. I'm sorry, coach. Look at her. Take another look at her. Her ass is 3 times mine. 3 times mine.
Well, I don't want to measure asses here, so I would just give my take on the Bills game so we can move on. So,
is this like an Ace Ventura like reenactment that we're going with here?
No. Why you say that, Richie? You know you're going to reenact the movement. You say the word Ace Ventura, he's going to set cap off. That's a trigger word. You forgot.
Don't go in there.
That's a trigger word for Cap. You can't do that. But as the word
out, man.
See, what I say? I told you it was a trigger word. But regardless of what we got going on comedic wise, I think that the game is an evaluation. It should be an evaluation. I think that, again, what I said at the top of the show about how we should be focusing on who we going to be working with in 2014. Clearly Justin Herbert's done for the season. I like to argue that Austin Eckler will no longer be with the team come next season. He's had a down year. And he still wants to be paid. And I'm thinking that's going to be in the cards for us. So we're going to reboot it running back. Look at Isaiah Spiller should be the guy you should be working on. Which are really why I could understand why they didn't keep Jared Patterson, because that could be another guy, young guy that you could be looking at to help fill a void at running back, because you're going to need a reboot there. Assume we're going to draft it address it in free agency or the draft when the league is reset. But yet again, it should be about the guys that we're going to keep, and we should be evaluating that. Now, how ironic is that we get the hot Bills coming in? They're on the series heater after thrashing the Cowboys, so they're going to be on tilt and trying to make a point. They got to win out to make the playoffs. So again, it needs to be a process of elimination of who we want to kind of weed out and figure out who's going to be available in the deep contributor when it comes down to what 2024 is going to look like. So that's really all I'm looking to see. I'm going to be eyeing guys that I'm looking, like I said, the 2023 draft class is the guys I really got my eyes on. How Tuli's progressing. Dayon's going to get any time. Looking at Darius Davis getting some work in at slot. Things of that nature. What our young corners are going to look like. I don't know if Dean Leonard's going to play because he's got a bad foot, but Jaseel Taylor and a few other guys we got in-house that they're going to be our secondary going forward. Even evaluating Sunday Samuel Jr. because he's coming up to a contract here soon. So we're going to have to make a decision on him here soon. So, just looking at that particular aspect of it, not looking at it from a competitive standpoint, because again, all we will be doing at this point is hurting our draft stock. It's not a situation where, you're trying to fight and trying to prove a point, trying to say that with 3 games left, I can be a head coach. That's not what you're there for as the interim. You're just there to manage the team and put on a good showing, a good organized showing, and realize to the league that, we've gotten the distractions and the bad apples out of the room, and we're moving forward. So I think that's where it really needs to be the focal point in regards to how we attack the Bills game. And every game going forward, the next 3 games we had, period, it should be a evaluation period, and to prove to the fan base that the issues that we had are gone, and we can start to as my popular word for the moment, heal and move forward and be better as a team in a more organized organization.
So I guess the question here is, how do you think this game is really going to look? And do you think your team is going to bounce back because they're not going to want a repeat of what happened the game before?
Well, I do believe we're going to get a better effort. I do believe that. I think that we're going to get a better effort from the team as a whole. I don't think what you saw on Thursday is going to be a microcosm of what we're going to see going forward. I don't think that. I really think they literally took the foot off the gas and decided and completely utterly gave up and wanted to look bad on purpose to prove to the organization that Staley has got to go. Because clearly, I think it was said in the media that the Spanos are really hands off when it comes down to letting their workers work and let them do their job. So, the idea of what maybe the Raiders end up doing, we're going to the owner themselves, may or may not have worked. Say that hypothetically, Derwin James went up top and talked to Dean Spanos and say, hey, we've got to make a change here, this and the third. They may not have worked. They said he might have just directed them right to Tom Telesco and said they talk to Tom, that kind of thing. So when those options are exhausted and you can't get through to your organization in any other facet, what you ultimately should end up doing is, again, against your heated rival on a solo game, prove to them that, his defense especially is completely and utterly not it and not the answer, and it's completely and utterly broken. And just look, if the public relations nightmare is not enough, then clearly you're not watching. I think that's where it landed for everybody. Like getting beat 63-21 in a game, in a solo game against your heated rival, again, that is something that you don't want to carry into next season and have it hovering over your franchise by investing more time in the Brandon Staley. So I think it just had to be an issue where he had to go. And I think we'll get a better effort going forward, because I think guys are going to get back to the idea of trying to put on good tape and good film for the team that they're going to be playing for this year, be it the Chargers, or next year, wherever they land. I think you're going to get a better effort this week. I'm not saying go act like we're going to win, but I do believe that you'll get a better effort.
No, I think it's it's difficult to end up with a game like the Raiders game again at the NFL level. It just is. It happens so infrequently to have such a disparity between two teams like that it's almost impossible to put up two games like that back to back.
Oh yeah.
Just because of the parity that the league has. So I do agree with that. Although you're in for a real challenge, though, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that. Again, like I said, it's just a little bit of draw of getting a hot team coming in to play us at the wrong time when we're trying to rebuild.
Yeah,
that's the only problem.
Yeah, I agree. So I think that's going to be a rough attempt for you guys. And if basically let's put it this way, if Staley wasn't already gone, I'm pretty sure the Bills game would likely have ended up being the one anyway, just because they are, just where they're at right now. So I think that'll be quite an interesting one as well. So with regards to that, moving on to you, Captain, in terms of your game, what do you see your week 16 matchup looking like? And yes, I can't believe it's week 16 already.
Yeah. It doesn't it just seem like yesterday we were doing preseason stuff.
How quickly it runs, right? How quickly it runs.
Yeah. I am not saying this in anything of a smug aspect. I'm not saying this as a smugster, okay? But, and here's the big but. Like the big but I was talking about, that's 3 sizes too big for the chick that was playing as the side. We'll go back to that as well. Anyway, I had to, Coach.
You had to rope that back in. I see you. I see you.
But the Raiders, obviously, there's going to be a bit of a letdown. You don't score 63 points and expect to score more the next game, especially going against another heated rival at their home in Kansas City, where
bad weather too out here. Bad weather.
Right. Well, actually, somebody was saying that it was only going to be 51. That was what.
No, rain.
Okay. Because it wasn't going to be as
cold. Yeah.
As what, like the last time, I should say the last time, like the second to last time I was there, when it was the Oakland Raiders playing the Kansas City Chiefs. I wanted to make sure I was there for that game. That game was early December, and it was tits cold. All the girls were walking around with everybody knew the areola size on because it was tits cold on that game. It's not going to be that cold this time, again 50, but it is going to be rainy. And the other thing is that there is not a quarterback on the Raiders roster who wears number 4 that doesn't play well in cold weather. We got Aiden O'Connell, who is a rookie, but he played at Purdue. So he's a little bit used to at least playing in weather games. Okay? He's not like the guy that couldn't play in anything under 40 degrees. I can't remember his name, but I think that there's an automobile or something tie-in to that as well. Aiden O'Connell is a rookie, but with the influx of whatever that new offensive system is as far as in the line blocking and the added, refreshment of the guys going out there and actually blocking and chipping and doing things that they need to do with Jacoby Myers throwing for a first down and a touchdown, the long ball threat to Turner from O'Connell, who has a good rapport with him, the fact that Jacobs isn't playing, but a very capable running back by committee with Zeus White and Abdullah and a guy by the name of Bolden that ran a what do you call it, a wildcat for a touchdown against the Chargers. I forgot that the guy was actually on the team other than special teams. And I'm like, my God, that was actually a great play. So the Raiders are going to actually be performing, or at least coming off a performance that is invaluable. And the Chiefs are coming off of almost 3 straight losses, because, again, they were on 2 straight losses, and they went into New England, and they didn't look particularly good. They didn't
Well,
look
Bill Belichick will do that to you. But go ahead though.
exactly. Yeah. And actually, I would say had they lost to New England and be on 3 straight losses, I'd say there is no way in hell they're going to lose 4 in a row. So thank God in that respect that didn't happen. They had 2 losses. They didn't play particularly well against the Patriots, and I'm actually calling for a win in Kansas City. And again, that's not a what do you call it? I can't remember biasness. I think they're actually going to go out there and play well. Remember, in Vegas, they were up, was it 14-0? Last year, they were up 17-0 in Kansas City. They just got to figure out how to take that early win or early up and keep going with it. Keep going with it. And like I said, Pierce is the guy that said at half against the Chargers, keep the foot on the gas. And with that type of mentality, going into Kansas City on a game that pretty much everybody's going to be watching, because except for me, I actually got to figure out how I'm going to watch it because it's on CBS and friggin' Tegden's still doing that bullshit with the DirecTV. So I got to break out a small TV and get the rabbit ears up, and hopefully I'll be able to, get a good reception for it. I ain't leaving the house on Christmas to go to the bar. But so hopefully we'll see that. I'm not being biased. I actually see a better game that the Raiders have. I see a lot of consternation and constipation with a guy by the name of Mahomes. I see some dissension on that team. I see some stuff that is, just not good. Okay? And I'm calling for a Raiders victory. You'll hear it here first because I'll do the same broadcast tomorrow on NFL Nation Live, 6 o'clock Eastern.
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug.
Yeah.
But I see a Raiders win, and I wish Alex was here because I'd love to hear the smugness come out and saying, contraire, Captain, or whatever that lawyer speak that he has. I object. Going back to a few good names. No, I sternly object. Oh, well, that's better. That's better than just regular object because I sternly and vociferously object. Well, we'll see. But I call for lawyer speak. I call for a Raider win. I might be really off base. The Raiders might have their asses handed to them. I don't know. But I see a lot of good things coming out of this team. And there was one person that even said, and this was the funny thing, they said the Raiders, the Broncos, and the Chiefs could all wind up with a 9-8 record. And if that happens, the Raiders win the division by virtue of having a 4-2 division record, if that would happen. Because for those things to happen, the Chargers would have to beat the Chiefs in one of the upcoming games for that to happen. And they would be 3-3, 3-3, and 4-2. I got to keep hope alive on that one. Okay. But there you go. I'm calling for a Raiders win. I wish my boy Alex Smugster was here. Remember, the normal broadcast of the Lightning Fast fantasy
podcast, yes,
which normally would be on in about 10 minutes, is not, but it will be aired tomorrow. Coach, please take it away.
Yes, the Lightning Fast Fantasy Football Podcast will be aired on a special night or special afternoon, lunchtime, at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time tomorrow on Thursday to give you those playoff takes and hot NFL news when it comes to fantasy football playoffs. So we are definitely going to broadcast live for an hour tomorrow at lunchtime. So take a break, eat some lunch, listen to us, get you that much needed advice when it comes down to your fantasy football lineups, and get you to that final game, get you to that money, get you that bag, get you that trophy. We'll be live and direct tomorrow at 12 noon.
Hey, I tried to set you up as well, brother.
You're my guy. You're my guy.
So I only have kind of one comment on the Raiders game there with your game coming up. I think this is your key to this game is really predicated on one group, and that's your offensive line. Are you going to continue running that kind of outside zone or zone blocking scheme, and is that going to hold up better against you have to give credit 100% what credit is due. I mean, Chris Jones is top 2, top 3 defensive interior guy in the league. I mean, he is lights out. So can that style of offensive line play hold up against a guy like him, and can you continue to both run and pass the ball with that type of protection and that type of scheme? If the answer is yes, then
no. The answer is to be determined.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. I said if the answer is yes, not assuming the answer, but if the answer is yes, then I do believe that you're going to be in a really solid position to potentially win that game, especially with the wide receiver room, with a modestly competent wide receiver for Mahomes in Kelsey, who's aging and starting to slow up a little bit as the season goes on, and literally no one else. Like everyone else is dropping everything.
Yeah. Well, and my only hope is that Kadarius Toney just keeps up with that wonderful play that he has shown the last several weeks. Because again, he's a Gator, and he like I said, Kadarius Toney, like Chris Collinsworth, who's a Gator, and I cannot stand Chris Collinsworth. Chris Collinsworth is.
That is the third time I've heard that just today. No
today?
lie. Just
really?
Just today. Three different people have said they hate Chris Collinsworth just today.
He's a flaming asshole, and he had a lot of things. He has had a lot of things swept under the. I'll get with you, Coach. There's things. Go back and look. There's things that were swept under before he went into the pros when he was playing in Florida. Same thing. Same thing. I can say to a couple other different people.
You have to enlighten me offline. Definitely enlighten me offline.
But check it out. But no, with Parm at center. I like what we got with Meredith because that's an upgrade. Because again, Parr moves to a better position where you need somebody who's a little bit lighter in the ass in that center position instead of having him at left guard. Because James was undersized at center, he was getting pushed. Well, I won't get the analogy. I don't want to offend people, but he was getting pushed back. Insert joke here more often than not. But Parm, that's the way he should be playing on the offensive line into the center. Meredith didn't play bad against a decent defensive line for the Chargers. So if they continue to do that, and again, they actually played well against a certain person by the name of, and again, Coach, just for you, Khalil Mack, who had 0 sacks. And Thule, the other kid that is a damn good defensive player, he didn't do too much either. So if they continue to do that, Chris Jones is no day at the beach. Trust me on that. So I'm sure
that is a fact.
There's going to be some game planning there. And I tell you what, this is Dante Scarnecchia's. This is his game to see whether he's actually going to survive, maybe getting a call to be the offensive line coach for next year. This game right here.
Yeah. So that's my only takeaway. And then with that in mind, we'll transition over to the Broncos, and then we'll end the show there. I think this is going to be a much closer game than people think it's going to be. I think the Broncos are still in a bit of a recovery mode. I do believe that this is ultimately going to land in a Broncos win, but I think it's going to be a bit of a slow burn getting there. And I think the challenge here is Bill Belichick, kind of, as you said, Captain, is no cushy day at the beach to coach against. And, I mean, especially a defensive-minded coach. It is what it is. No, thank you. Please no. Please no. Just no. Just no.
Well, we're on to Denver, and it's going to be a great game. Next question on to Denver.
Hoodie.
Yeah. And so I think what you're going to end up with New England in particular is they're either going to completely eliminate Sutton from the game, which has really been one of the main drivers of some of our touchdowns, especially with those deep passes, or he's going to focus on just all-out mayhem on the interior and edges of the offensive line with like delayed safety blitzes and things of that nature, which have really caught our tackles, especially, and between the tackle and guard has actually been a high success rate of pressure with those kind of delayed safety and corner blitzes against our line. So I do wonder which one or if both will be employed by Bill Belichick, because he has certainly forgot more about the defensive side of the ball than I have ever known. So we'll leave it at that. But I think those are kind of where we're going to be at against the Patriots. The offensive side of the ball, I think we'll have the defensive side of our ball versus their offense, I think we'll have some success. But we are without depth at the edge side. And I think that is impacting our ability to get pressure back on the opposing quarterback, which actually will force us to perhaps look worse than we actually are, just because we're starting to dwindle in terms of options. So I think it'll be a much closer game than Broncos fans would like it to be. And I think it will take the run game on the offensive side of the ball to start breaking out later in the game, or maybe McLaughlin, for example, with speed versus size, or some, basically a yin to a yang to kind of counter what Belichick is doing from Sean Payton in order for us to really kind of pull away in this game. But I really think it's going to be a much, much, much closer game than Broncos fans would prefer.
It's amazing that Sarah Mack is still in the league after all the singing that she's done, and she's playing pretty well as a Bronco. In the arms of the angel.
Oh, Sarah McLaughlin. Okay, I was like, okay. I was like, who? Sarah McLaughlin.
I knew where you were going.
The ASPCA commercials.
That's basically like the Justin Bieber response for me, which is you can have her.
Oh.
And some people apparently have.
I believe so.
Oh,
yeah.
Double O.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I see this game, and this is really one of those scary ones where there is I do almost see this as a bit of a coin flip game in some regards, where if the right things go the right way, I mean, this could be the nail in the coffin for Denver's, playoff hopes, right? Like if they don't recover, this could well be a loss given circumstances, and we have to be very, very careful about that. No, I think we're going to win, but I think this has got some real risks to it. So, anyways,
I mean, it could be ugly. I think y'all will win. I think that again. I think they're on the same train we're on. They're going to put up a good show. Bill's going to be Bill, but I think he's going to give you some opportunities and leave the door open long enough for you to be able to win the game, at least at the end of it.
Like,
are they talking snow for this game? Did I hear that? Did they talk snow for this game?
This was on what day? Saturday or Sunday? I have to look it up.
Yeah, but I think they call it snow.
Sunday.
I think it's on Sunday. Yeah,
I think they call it snow that day. I think this is going to be a snow game.
Oh, that'd be perfect.
Oh yeah.
That'd be perfect.
Yeah, snow games in Denver. I just think of I can't remember the Curry, the Raiders wide receiver with the one-handed catch at the because that is a Denver snow game moment.
Ronald Curry, was that Ronald Curry?
Ronald Curry from North Carolina. Yes, sir. Ronald Curry.
Well, I mean, the snow game I remember is C.J. Anderson running the ball all over the field on the Patriots, and then Belichick beelining to him after the game and saying,
he was tight.
Bill
was tight. Bill was tight. Listen, if he did this, you saw steam coming from his collar. Bill was tight that day.
Yeah.
I can't even put on my hoodie and do that well. Oh, man. For sure.
Oh, he was tight that day. I used to see Bill that man in a good while.
I remember that, man.
I do too. That Bill was tight that day, boy.
Yeah. I really do think that this is going to be a very challenging game for the Broncos, more so than Denver fans believe. I think it's more likely than not than the schedule that's coming up, but it is certainly not a gimme, and it is certainly not something.
Got some work to do. Got some work to do for sure.
Yeah, it's a more likely than not, but it is certainly a tough go for us to make it into the playoffs, particularly with the Raiders playing better football now, and the fact that the Broncos have lost their momentum as a result of the absolute blowout to the Lions. And so I think those two things combined will make this quite difficult moving forward. And we have to come up with the answer to correct what's there. Otherwise, we run the risk of coming up against a team that is very Lions-esque in the first round of the playoffs and getting just absolutely just blown out. And then that will kind of deflate the team, I think, even going into the offseason, thinking that, it was all for naught in some regards, right? So that'd be something else to look out for. The other piece here, just as a Broncos fan, I do want to kind of out on the record again, is just because we have won a bunch of games in the back end of this season, I really don't want that to be smoke and mirrors and misinterpreted by our front office. The Broncos need an awful lot of help, especially on the interior of our defensive line as well. And in addition to that, on the offensive line, just kind of, hearkening back to my analysis of the Lions game. So I really want to make sure that we don't ignore the deficiencies rather on the team just because we've won a few games. We still need to improve. As we all know, in the NFL, you're not improving, then you're getting worse. And so I obviously want my team to improve in the offseason. So I'd like to see us not ignore those issues, and I don't believe that Sean Payton will. But ladies and gentlemen, we are getting to the end of the show. We have covered all things past and all things coming up. Alex, unfortunately, was not able to join us tonight. We do hope all is well with him, and you will catch him at noon tomorrow for the Lightning Fast Fantasy Podcast. That is a tongue twister if you've ever heard one.
That's why I left it to Coach. I said, Coach, you say your freaking show.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that in mind, until next week, where the West Side is the best side. Peace.